From the moment Ben Whittaker stepped beneath the blinding Olympic lights in Tokyo, the boxing world felt a shift, a fresh crackle in the air, a spark that signaled a new kind of storm brewing on the horizon. He didn't just fight. He announced himself loudly, unapologetically, and with a swagger that echoed the memory of legendary showmen like Prince Nassim. Some people were electrified by it, some irritated, but none were able to look away. In an era hungry for spectacle, Ben Whittaker emerged as the dancing beast ready to devour the spotlight. His style fused the ruthlessness of a predator with the flourish of a performer who understands that victory is only half the battle. The other half is making the crowd feel something. And with every entrance, every taunt, every dazzling slip and punishing counter, he made sure they did. By 2024, Whittaker had ignited a wildfire of attention. His name echoed across forums, broadcast gyms, and social feeds. 5 professional victories, 4 of them stoppages, had cemented him as more than a hype builder. He was becoming a phenomenon. His opponents entered the ring hoping to silence the showman, but often ended up contributing unwillingly to his growing highlight reel. The French contender Khalid Graidia came into their bout brimming with intent and fury, speaking of sending Whittaker to the hospital and declaring that surgeons would be needed by the time he was finished. But what unfolded that night was not surgery. It was a tutorial in controlled chaos. Whittaker floated around Graidia with a mix of elegance and mockery, dancing just beyond the reach of the Frenchman's desperate swings. He stung him with the precision of a wasp, forcing frustration to bubble in Gradia's chest. Punch after missed punch chipped away at his patience, until, in a moment of bitterness, he launched a sneaky blow toward the back of Whittaker's head. It was a dirty shot, quick, spiteful, and born from exhaustion. But instead of breaking Ben's rhythm, it awakened something far more dangerous. In that instant, Graidia didn't just land an illegal punch. He cracked open a door he would soon regret opening. Whittaker's expression sharpened. His movements intensified. The dance became something ritualistic, as though the foul had summoned the beast lurking beneath his grin. He attacked Gradia's body with venomous precision, punishing him until Frenchman could do nothing but absorb the consequences. And then, with a final touch of theatrical brutality, Whittaker danced around his battered opponent, mockingly, brilliantly, before finishing him. The crowd roared in a mixture of shock, delight, and disbelief. Love him or hate him, everyone agreed on one thing. The man didn't just win, he performed. His next step was a showdown with fellow Englishman Leon Willings, a collision fueled by pride and the unspoken challenge of determining who truly ruled the British boxing scene. In a country with only one Big Ben, the tension carried a unique humor. But once the bell rang, the smiles faded. Whittaker stormed forward with aggression sharpened by confidence, pinning Willings into the corner and carving into him with a series of crisp shots that rang across the arena. Willings tried to counter, tried to rise to the moment, but every attempt was swallowed by Whittaker's flair. The dancing surgeon made the ring his stage, weaving rhythm into violence, shifting his torso and flashing a playful grin before unleashing another punishing snap of leather. As the rounds ticked by, Whittaker's dominance grew so absolute that he began glancing beyond Willings altogether. It looked as if he were scanning the audience for his next target, the next name he would fold into his growing legend. Willings fought back where he could, but his legs betrayed him more than once, wobbling beneath him like someone who had stepped onto a bar floor after one drink too many. The judge's unanimous decision was inevitable, but the real victory was the way Whittaker's fans erupted, their faith reaffirmed, their energy swelling with every mocking shuffle and sharp left hand. The country had felt his presence. Europe was beginning to take notice, and soon the world would too. 3 months later, another test appeared. Slovakia's Vladimir Belujsky, known as Big Bad Vlad, a knockout artist with the kind of power that could turn the lights out in an instant. Power means little when you cannot touch your target. From the moment the fight began, Belujsky found himself drowning in Whittaker's rhythm. Every charge forward was met with a rebuttal, a fast body shot, a whip-like counter, a spinning angle that left the Slovakian punching nothing but air. Whittaker used his feet, like a master sculptor uses a chisel, carving openings into his opponent's guard, taking pieces of him away one strike at a time. For 3 rounds, Whittaker dismantled him, not with reckless fury but with surgical precision. And then came the knockdown, a moment that split the fight in half. Belujsky rose, grinning defiantly, trying to convince the world that he felt nothing. But the bravado only fed Whittaker's spiteful creativity. Seeing Big Bad Vlad mock the damage was like poking the sleeping dragon. Whittaker responded by mirroring his movements, copying his ridiculous air-punching gestures, turning Vlad's attempted intimidation into a comedy routine that had the crowd erupting in laughter. And then the mask dropped. Whittaker unleashed a final avalanche of sharp, merciless blows. Belujsky staggered, surviving only by instinct until a referee stepped in, protecting him from the storm he could no longer withstand. The victory wasn't just another win. It was a declaration of hierarchy. You could be strong, tough, powerful, but if you stepped into the ring with Whittaker, you had to be prepared for something else entirely. Humiliation. His next journey took him to the Apennine Peninsula, where Italy's Stephen Graidia waited, determined to end the British showman's streak and steal the spotlight for himself. Graidia entered with a focused intensity, but Whittaker saw through him instantly. He read Graidia's movements as if skimming familiar pages of a book he had already studied. Every jab was anticipated, every shift predicted, every attempt countered before it could bloom into danger. Whittaker's timing was eerie, slipping just inches away from punches that had been thrown with conviction but connected with nothing. As the rounds unfolded, Whittaker's strikes grew heavier. The right hand that had once only stung began carving red trails across Graidia's face. And when the third round reached its final seconds, Whittaker delivered the moment the crowd had been waiting for. A perfectly timed combination sliced through the Italian's guard, sent him to one knee, breath heaving, pride cracking under the weight of precision he could not match. From that moment on, Graidia's spirit dimmed. He continued moving, continued fighting, but part of him had been taken in that single knockdown. Whittaker stalked him with cold efficiency until the referee, witnessing the unraveling firsthand, called an end to the punishment. The Italian challenge had failed, and Whittaker's legend grew yet another chapter stronger. But if any fight symbolized the essence of Whittaker's emerging mythology, it was his 2023 showdown against Scotland's Jordan Grant. Whittaker arrived dressed in the skin of a cheetah, signaling to the world exactly what kind of predator they were dealing with that night. From the first bell, he toyed with Grant, dodging punches with the slippery ease of a man built from liquid rather than muscle. Grant, heavier set but determined, swung with force, yet everything he threw seemed to land on empty air. The crowd gasped with each slippery turn, each leaning escape, each grin Whittaker flashed as punishment for Grant's missed swings. But Whittaker wasn't simply there to entertain. He landed punches with relentlessness, snapping Grant's head back and carving bruises into his skin. The hematoma blooming on Grant's face was a portrait painted by Whittaker's gloves. And when the knockdown finally came, a sharp, punishing blow delivered with the precision of a sniper, Grant's world shifted. The referee counted, Grant rose, but nothing felt the same. Whittaker sensed it instantly. He moved in, forcing Grant into an unwanted duet, guiding him step by step into the rhythm of defeat. It wasn't long before Grant's corner threw in the towel, refusing to allow another moment of unnecessary punishment. The beating had morphed into something definitive, something symbolic. Another opponent had fallen to the dancing killer's choreography. But before all these victories, before the world began whispering about the rise of the surgeon, before the mockery, the swagger, the theatrics, there was 2022, the professional debut, the first chapter in this unfolding saga. Whittaker stepped into the ring with Greg O'Neill, a man carrying the ambitious nickname The Real Deal, hoping to carve his own legacy. Yet from the opening bell, it became clear that Whittaker existed on a different timeline. He was faster, sharper, hungrier. He rocked O'Neill with such ease that even the commentators gasped. And then came the moment that would echo across highlight reels, the showboating, the birth of the theatrical flair that would become his signature. The crowd erupted in laughter and awe, witnessing a new kind of performer take shape. By the second round, Whittaker ended the fight with a single brutal punch that sent O'Neill drifting into unconsciousness. It was his first professional knockout, his first true announcement. The world had just been introduced to a man who wouldn't simply win fights. He would redefine how they were experienced. The story of Ben Whittaker is not a completed tale. It's a rising tide gathering momentum. Every fight adds another layer to legend, another highlight to the reel, another debate to the conversation. Will he become a future boxing icon, carving his name alongside the greats? Or is he a comet, brilliant, wild, unforgettable for a moment before fading into the sky? Time will deliver the answers, but for now, the world continues to watch the dancing beast as he crafts each chapter with fists, footwork, and fearless flair. Touching nothing but air, Whittaker uses feet, like a master sculptor uses a chisel, carving openings into his opponent's guard, taking pieces of him away one strike at a time. For 3 rounds, Whittaker dismantled him, not with reckless fury but with surgical precision. And then came the knockdown, a moment that split the fight in half. Belujsky rose, grinning defiantly, trying to convince the world that he felt nothing. But the bravado only fed Whittaker's spiteful creativity. Seeing Big Bad Vlad mock the damage was like poking the sleeping dragon. Whittaker responded by mirroring his movements, copying his ridiculous air-punching gestures, turning Vlad's attempted intimidation into a comedy routine that had the crowd erupting in laughter. And then the mask dropped. Whittaker unleashed a final avalanche of sharp, merciless blows. Belujsky staggered, surviving only by instinct until a referee stepped in, protecting him from the storm he could